Anne's ears rang loudly as she walked slower through the curtain of fog. Anne found herself ensnared in the harrowing grip of the stench of pain that she didn't want to admit to herself comforted her in some scary way. She stood in an endless hall of these dusty mirrors, shattered by age, their frames adorned with twisted gargoyle faces that seemed to mock her presence. The air was thick with a mist so dense it obscured her vision, leaving her unable to see beyond a few steps ahead. In the swell of air and mouldy water that clung to her nostrils, Anne could hear distant laughter and the melancholic sigh of a foreboding wind. The whispers seemed to beckon and taunt her, their voices a chilling blend of nature's lament and an unseen, malevolent force. They seemed to originate from all around her, enveloping her in a disorienting symphony of darkness. "Anne," the whispers hissed, "you can't save him." Desperation clawed at her heart as she sought her brother, screaming out to him in the monochrome of the mirrors, "Riley!" While the shift of the movement was to dodge and bend, she felt the need to cower. The endless mirrors reflected her brother's distorted, ghostly image, and in each reflection she saw the same despair etched onto her own face. With every step, the metallic thorns on the silvery vines creeped across the edges of these mirrors, scraping against her skin, adding to her growing sense of dread. Riley's voice, barely audible, seemed to drift from behind one of the mirrors, beckoning Anne to follow. Her pulse quickened, and she rushed towards the source of his voice, her breaths shallow and strained. But as she reached out to touch the mirror's surface, Riley's reflection wavered, as if he was fading into the black of an endless night. In here, he was trapped within the very mirrors that surrounded her, a prisoner of their cruel enchantment. She pressed her hands against the glass, her fingers sinking into an icy abyss, but she couldn't reach him. The mirrors taunted her, revealing fractured glimpses of her brother that flickered and faded, like ghostly memories slipping through her fingers. In this very moment, Anne lashed out, her rage honed in on the rippling, reflective pool of the surface of the mirror. Her wailing turned into screams of hate. Energy flowed through her entire body, pulsating like a heartbeat from the core of her solar plexus out through the tips of her fingers, her nails growing into beastly talons. Riley's distant voice called out to her, but it seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere, a maddening echo that reverberated through the hall. "Anne," he whispered, "you are me." The words hung in the air like a heavy shroud, chilling her to the core. The malevolence of this place seemed to intensify as she realized the inescapable truth within those haunting words. With a jolt and a pain in her side, Anne awoke, drenched in sweat, and she had to touch her face. Why were there tears on her cheeks, she thought? Her heart was still pounding. The echoes of the dream still clung to her, leaving her trembling under the bedcovers, her brother's name on her lips as she grappled with the overwhelming fear of losing him to forces both seen and unseen. Her heart was still racing from the remnants of the vivid nightmare. The room was cloaked in shadows, and she struggled to shake off the lingering fear that clung to her like a ghostly veil. As she sat up, she noticed an eerie silhouette outside her window that seemed to dance with an otherworldly energy. In the dim moonlight, Anne squinted, trying to make sense of the peculiar sight. A quill feather, ethereal yet ghostly, hovered before her window pane, its tip tracing cryptic symbols in the air. Intrigued and apprehensive, she edged closer, her breath catching the glass as the feather seemed to respond to her presence, etching out words in a riddle. Within old halls of a place unseen, where creatures glide and secrets glean, two hearts connected, unravel the lore, unlock this riddle, the curse no more. Anne blinked in disbelief, the ethereal glow fading with the closing of her eyes. When she opened them again, The quill and its cryptic dance had vanished, leaving only the tranquil moonlight spilling into her room. A chill ran down her spine as she scanned the surroundings, half expecting the quill to reappear. Frantically, she searched the room, her fingers grazing the window pane, seeking any trace of the magical quill. Yet, it was as elusive as a dream, slipping through grasping fingers. The words of the riddle echoed in her mind, but the tangible connection had vanished like a wisp of smoke. Frustration etched across her face. Anne sighed and settled back onto her bed. Her fingers drummed anxiously on the sheets as she whispered to herself, "Am I going mad?" The room seemed to echo with the question, but the silence held no answers. The weight of uncertainty pressed upon her, and as she closed her eyes, the remnants of the mysterious encounter lingered in her thoughts, leaving Anne to wonder if the magic she had witnessed was a mere figment of an overwrought imagination or a glimpse into a hidden world that beckoned her to look harder. As a thundering sound suddenly started hammering down on the open window, she realized she had eventually managed to fall into a deep sleep. Anne reached to close the now extremely wet window. Turning onto her left side, there was a sharp stab that pricked into her olive skin. She felt the urge to uncover herself to reveal the wound, and as she did so, the pain happened again. "Oh, Jesus Christ! What the hell?" Anne yelped. She pulled back the red and gold patchwork quilt her aunt had made her that Christmas. She had noticed a glimmer in the rays of the sun that poured through the shadow of the dark skies. It sparkled in the rain like prisms in the sky, which shone off an open safety pin. In that moment, she felt frustrated and flicked the pin through the cold, early morning air, where her breath lingered in the rays of the sunrise as the pin traveled effortlessly. "I can't believe he's still this childish. Still with the pranks? Are you still 5? She looked across and realized the pin had landed in her twin brother's hair. While he flipped himself over from his back onto his front like a walrus, he snorted loud enough the birds on the windowsill took flight. As she gazed upon him, Anne grunts slightly and falls onto her back with a displeased expression. How come her brother is always asleep? Does nothing wake him? Yet she slept so light she barely could catch a wink. As an urge comes over her to grab her nearest pillow and to launch it at him, just to see if he even reacts. Going for the feather down, she takes her arm back far enough she feels her sockets start to twinge. However, staring at him, her frustration turns to guilt, and she places it back into its original spot, hearing their mother calling up from downstairs. Anne followed the sound of the voice with confusion on her face. How could it be time to get up already? Also, why was their mother still in the house? She was not usually here at this time. On one hand, she wanted to run downstairs and hug her mother with excitement. On the other hand, she was reluctant to even respond. Instead, all she could do is stare out the window, watching the rain die away. Suddenly, her brother woke up, sitting upright and alert. Fully aware that it was breakfast time, he flung off his covers and leaped himself from out of his bed. "Today's the day, Anne. I get to try out for the team today," he said with such glee. Anne just shook her head and proceeded to slowly get to her feet. Light filtered through the curtains as Anne parted them. Blinded by the sun, she squinted, closing them again fast. Riley prepared to descend for breakfast. Riley, brimming with enthusiasm, spoke animatedly about trying out for a new sports club at school. "Hey, Anne, I'm thinking of joining the new sports club at school. It's got this cool mix of—" But Anne, still under the lingering haze of a restless night, yawned and absent-mindedly interrupted. Sports club? Right, sounds fun. I don't know if you're cut out for tennis, though." She blinked, realizing her mistake. Riley chuckled. "Why would I be doing tennis? I bloody hate tennis. I'm trying out for football, sis." Anne, still half lost in her fatigue, nodded vaguely. "Oh, right. Football and—" I'm sure you said tennis somewhere before? Riley laughed. No, I didn't. I said football. Seriously, you need to wake up. As they continued to ready themselves, Riley couldn't help but notice the weariness in Anne's eyes. Concern crept into his voice. Hey, Anne, you feeling okay? Why haven't you tried to attend clubs yet? You'd enjoy it, and it's a good way to make friends. Anne hesitated, her gaze dropping to the floor. I don't know, Riley. Just not my thing, I guess. Riley, sensing there was more beneath the surface, pressed gently. Come on, you can tell me. What's really going on? Anne hesitated again before admitting quietly, I don't have any friends to join clubs with. The vulnerability in her voice lingered in the room, a silent plea for understanding from her twin to leave it well alone. Riley understood that look in her eye as she glanced up at him with a tinge of resentment. He backed away a bit, allowing Anne out of the room first. Following her to the edge of the stairs, he gently held onto her shoulder and squeezed it before walking past her down the stairs. She knew that was his way of trying to reassure her that everything will be okay. Morning air is brisk when out in the countryside this time of year. In their modest two-bedroom house in Surrey, Anne and Riley descended the creaky stairs, their footsteps barely audible in the dawn's quietude. The kitchen, bathed in the soft glow of the rising sun, welcomed them with its cozy warmth. Anne, with her tousled auburn hair and determined gaze, set out bowls and cereal, while Riley, his sandy hair falling slightly in his eyes, grabbed the milk from out of the fridge. Mum, you didn't mention to us you were staying home today? Would have been nice to have known. Riley looked over to Anne and shrugged. Their mother Mary was unable to even keep her eyes from closing, yawning and stretching as she made a groaning sound, while perching herself slowly on the chair by the bowl on the table, barely even acknowledging her children. Just as she was about to grab for the coffee grounds, Anne forcefully put a hand on top of it. Mary attempted to swipe her hand away and then sat back, arms folded, staring up at Anne. Have you gone deaf or something? Riley tried to stop Anne by doing a cut motion by his throat, trying to shut her up. Menacingly, their mum stood up from the table and slammed her fist down hard enough the bowls rattle. Mary walked around the outside of the table to meet with Anne's gaze, squaring up to her, not taking her eyes away from hers. Don't you do this to me. Don't you judge me like you are the adult here. I'm done with your inability to understand how much I am doing for you both. Mary broke down into tears. Riley tried his hardest to console Mary, but she pushed him away at the chest, telling him to leave her be and to not get close. In a moment, Anne pushed their mother harder to try and get a rise out of her. Anything at all would be a fine thing. You work like every mother should for their kids. It doesn't make you a martyr, and certainly doesn't give you any excuse to ignore Riley. Anne felt Riley staring at her, but refused to look his way for fear of disappointment in his eyes. Mary blew her nose into a tissue that she ripped out of the tissue box in anger, trying through the shakes of her hand to pour herself a coffee. Yet the boiling steam of the water from the coffee maker made a nasty burning sound on the skin of her hand. Pulling back, she knocked her bowl of cereal onto the floor, the milk catching her on the way down, soiling her clothes. This is all your fault. All I wanted was a peaceful day off with my children today, my first day off in 3 months, and you treat me like crap. If you hadn't been such a little brat today, this wouldn't have happened. I don't want to talk to either of you now. Just leave me alone. Mary left out the front door, slamming it behind her. Riley watched her leave up the garden path. Turning to look at Anne, he sighed heavily and walked to the edge of the long pine wood table. As they sat down together to have breakfast, a palpable tension lingered in the air. The topic of their estranged father was like an unspoken ghost in the room, haunting the peace they had tried to maintain. It had been a year since their mother Mary had divorced him, and the wounds were still fresh. Riley, his voice tinged with frustration, broke the silence. "Anne, I don't understand why you're that harsh with Mum. She's really trying, I see it. Why don't you? Since Dad left and the divorce, she really has done everything for us." Anne, her brows furrowing, responded with a mixture of sadness and resentment. "Riley, you know why I feel this way. Dad's actions hurt all of us as a unit, and yet Mum forgets we are in pain too. She's focused only on her selfish and entitled feelings. I feel for her, I really do, but it's no excuse for leaving us alone with ours." The argument hung in the air, unresolved. Despite their differences, they shared the pain of their parents' separation and the desire to shield their mother from any more heartache. Yet Anne holds some resentment towards their mother that she can't even describe to herself. Anne and Riley understood that their teenage years were fraught with complexities, but they were determined to navigate them together, as the support they provided each other was a powerful force that held their small family together. Anne and Riley had grown up in the quiet suburbs of Surrey, United Kingdom, facing the challenges of a family torn apart. Their parents' relationship had soured years ago, leading to an estrangement that cast a shadow over their lives. Their mother, Mary, was a resilient but aloof single mum, working tirelessly to make ends meet. Mary held down 2 jobs, both demanding and exhausting, to provide for her children. She worked as a cashier in a local supermarket during the day and cleaned offices at night, sacrificing her own well-being to ensure Anne and Riley had a roof over their heads and food on the table. It was a thankless, grueling routine, and she rarely had time for herself or for her children, resulting in her becoming bitter and depressed. Anne and Riley, at 13, had learned to grow up fast. With their mother constantly preoccupied with work, they took on significant responsibilities at home. They made sure the bills were paid, groceries were bought, and the house was kept in order. Their bond as twins was unbreakable, and they supported each other through the challenges they faced, although at times they didn't see eye to eye. Despite the adversity, Anne and Riley were determined to pursue their education and make a better life for themselves and their mother. They attended the local secondary school, where they juggled their studies and household chores. Their teachers often commended their diligence and strong work ethic. They found solace in each other and their dreams for the future. Anne aspired to become a nurse, driven by her compassionate nature and a desire to help others. Riley had a talent for computer programming and dreamed of pursuing a career in technology. Together, they encouraged and inspired each other to stay focused on their goals. Life was far from easy, but Anne and Riley refused to let their family's estrangement define their future. They knew that by working hard and supporting their mother, they were laying the foundation for a better life and a brighter future in the heart of Surrey. Amid the gentle clinking of cutlery and the aroma of bread from the local bakery, Anne and Riley engaged in their usual morning routine. The sun's rays streamed through the kitchen window, casting a warm glow on their faces as they sat around the table. Anne and Riley had their bowls in front of them while sipping on a glass of freshly squeezed orange juice. Anne felt it was the best moment to cut the tension with something positive. Anne, her eyes filled with determination, looked at her brother and began, "Hey, I've been thinking a lot about my future, and I want to go to university to study nursing. I've always wanted to help people, and I think nursing is the path for me." Riley smiled, his eyes filled with pride and support. "Anne, that's a wonderful goal, and I know you'd make an amazing nurse. Your caring nature is perfect for the job." Riley, not one to be left out, chimed in enthusiastically, as if to get Anne's approval. "Well, I've been researching computer programming courses. I want to become a computer programmer. The tech industry has so much potential, and I'd love to be a part of it." Anne beamed at him, both their aspirations filling her with hope. I couldn't be prouder of you. Your dreams are just as important, and I'll do everything I can to support you in achieving them. I am sorry that earlier it seemed like I didn't care. I really do. The kitchen is filled with a sense of shared dreams and unwavering support. Anne and Riley knew that despite the hardships they faced as a family, they could count on each other to strive for their goals and create a brighter future. The bond they shared over breakfast was a testament to the strength. Riley glimpsed over at the clock that hung over the low fridge against a water-stained wall. Oh crap, Anne, it's time to leave soon. We only got half an hour before the bus arrives. It takes you that time to just do your makeup. Anne looked hurt, in jest. I think you need to look at yourself in the mirror before you go judging me, you idiot. She pointed to the stairwell and gestured to him to leave the room. Riley grabbed for his orange juice, gulping it down before he left to run upstairs. While Anne was by the sink, washing up a few dirty dishes that lay resting in the porcelain from their mum's meal the night prior. Anne felt it necessary to bring up the divorce in a text to their mum. In a flash, the soft glow of the sun on her face felt colder as soon as she opened up the flip phone. It was a difficult conversation they needed to have, and the tension she felt was undeniable. Anne cleared her throat and started typing, "Mum, I feel I need to apologize for my part today. I know you're trying, but you always forget we have feelings too. We really need to talk about Riley. He's been so upset about the divorce, and I don't think he understands why it had to happen." She stared at the empty screen left on unread and sighed sadly, looking down at her hands in shame. Suddenly, she noticed her mum was typing and eagerly awaited the response. In a moment it stopped. She saw the dots that indicates typing disappear. Anne felt a sense of uncontrollable guilt come over her like a wave. Finally, the alert of a response rung. "I know, Anne. It's been tough on all of us, but Riley seems to be taking it the hardest. He loved your father and I being together, as did I once upon a time, and he just can't make sense of it all. The truth is, we had been struggling for a while after the gambling and him losing all of our money. We had grown apart, and our differences had become too much to bear. We thought it was best for everyone, especially for you both, to go our separate ways." Anne set her phone to one side, her heart heavy, saying to herself in a mumble, "I can see why it had to happen, but Riley can't. He is wary now of everyone. He's not been out with his friends, and he's blaming himself. Mum, can't you see that?" She grabbed the phone again to respond to her mum's message, trying her hardest to make amends as best she can. "Mum, I shouldn't have said those things. Please forgive me for being thoughtless," Anne says as she twists and contorts her mouth as she doesn't fully want to write it. Upstairs, Riley looked through the banister at Anne on her phone with an angered expression. He knew full well who she was texting. His heart ached from betrayal. He knew he had to confront his feelings, but as he overheard his sister talking about him without discussing the situation with him, it made him feel small and insecure. Deep in his mind, he thought, did she not feel he was strong enough or man enough to take it? Could she be correct in thinking that way? Going over to the open doorway to their bedroom, he leans on the splintered doorframe, looking across into the floor-length mirror at himself. The soft murmurs of his sister's voice drifted around in his head. Filled with curiosity and anxiety, he made his way to the mirror that stood against the wall. As he looked at his reflection, he couldn't help but notice the confusion in his eyes, reflecting the turmoil he felt within. His short, messy, tousled hair falling slightly over his forehead, a reminder of how unkempt he'd become amidst the emotional chaos. In the mirror, Riley saw a boy who felt misunderstood. He saw the innocence of his age, the longing for answers, and the need to be a part of the conversation taking place downstairs. His young heart ached, feeling like a puzzle piece left out of the picture. He knew he could never understand the complexities of his parents' divorce fully, but he believed that being included in their discussions would at least help him make sense of it. Tears welled up in Riley's eyes as he stared at his own reflection, silently pleading for the chance to be heard, to be a part of the conversation that was defining his family's future. He yearned to bridge the gap between his understanding and the grown-up world, where, in his mind, all the answers lay. Anne ran into the bedroom. Riley, as he sat on his side of the room with his puffy red eyes, turned his face away to the wall and put on his usual grin. While they began their usual routine of getting ready for school, Anne playfully teased her brother, "You know, Riley, I saw you snoozing your alarm 3 times this morning. You're lucky I didn't tell Mum. You're turning into a real sleepyhead." Riley shot back with a mischievous grin. "Well, at least I didn't have a text discussion with Mum about you." Anne raised an eyebrow, recalling the serious conversation she'd had with their mother about the divorce. "Oh, wait, how did you know? Look, I'm really sorry, it was rude of me." Riley interrupted, shrugging it off, trying to hide the pang of hurt deep down. "Nah, it's all good. I don't need to be involved in that. It's all negative stuff." He put on a brave face, not wanting to let his feelings show. Anne felt it necessary to change the subject. Both rushed to grab their backpacks as time had somehow gotten away from them, stuffing in textbooks, pencil cases, and their lunchboxes. Riley scooped up the leather bag onto his shoulder, and thankfully he had looked down to his bed. He had almost left behind their house keys. Idiot. He rolled his eyes at himself before taking the keys, heading down the rickety wooden stairs. Riley jangled his keys inside his hand. Jumping to the floor, he felt his knee give way slightly as he almost fell over. Anne looked at him sharply with disdain as he continued to make the tinny sound with his hand. He knows full well it puts Anne on edge. She is now standing before him, gritting her teeth. "Could you please stop doing that? You know it grates on me every morning. You do it coming down the stairs as we leave the house, all the way to the bus stop, on the bus, and all the way to school." Anne clenched her fist into a ball. "Chill out. I will stop. I never tell you to stop all the whining on about your favorite TV shows or movies that I am not bothered about. It's constant. I'm trying to sleep and you're yapping away. I know you have insomnia from the dreams, but I need my beauty sleep." Riley smirked at her, which only made Anne walk to the door in a huff. Riley opened it for Anne to go out before him like a gentleman, even though it's forced, making them both laugh as they exit the house. Riley pulled the door hard enough so it locked tight behind them as they walk fast up the garden path.